never ceases to amaze me that organisations overlook addressing the number one factor that can have most impact on their business and organisational performance. And that number one factor is the human mind. It's the human mind. It's about how we think in every moment. And the more power and understanding we have of the human mind, when we're all working together, the more effective we can be in how we're running an organisation together. So if you look at the sporting world, 30 years ago, sports psychology was a very early stage subject. It was sort of poo-pooed. People weren't really interested in it. It was seen as a bit airy-fairy. But now, of course, every sports top athlete has a sports psychologist. And they do that because they realise that in the moment that they're competing in their sport, the mind has a hugely significant impact on how they're operating and in the moment. Now in business it's no different, because we're all running around doing things to achieve results in a competitive environment exactly in the same way. But because we're so busy, we haven't yet acknowledged the full power and impact that the mind's having in those moments. So there's been billions of dollars invested over the years in people development. And what we're doing is we're developing their behaviours, we're sending them on negotiation skills, or we're developing their knowledge, sending them on a finance course, or giving them more knowledge, giving them different assignments to give them experience. We're doing things like personality profiling, so they help them understand themselves a bit better. But actually, that people say that about 12, the money that's invested in personal development, only 12% of it actually really has a lasting impact on how people operate and their performance. Now we believe that's because they're missing the underlying factor underneath all of this. So underneath our personality, our identity, our beliefs, our behaviours, is the human mind, which is our human mind, and understanding that is the key element. So understanding how we think, how we feel, how we operate as human beings. And this is why we're spending so much time in this field, because we see the power of helping people understand their human mind and the impact that can have in how people operate and then the business results that they achieve. Piers, tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing around mind and mindset.
Well, I've been in the space of human performance for 15 years, and in the last sort of 4 or 5 years I've really understood what I believe is the absolute critical factor in human performance and well-being as well, and that's to understand how the mind truly works. And the more that we see the role and relevance of our mindset or state of mind in business and in life, the more we're able to make a difference. So what's overlooked for most people is actually how much our mind is affecting our ability to perform and our well-being in any moment. And once we understand that, and we also understand that the mind works perfectly if we understand how it's working. What most of us are innocently doing is actually getting in our own way by overthinking, by analysing, making lots of meaning about what's going on. And when we step back and we see how the mind actually works, we find a sense of clarity, peace, perspective, that just makes things happen easier. So actually what happens as a result of that is you achieve more with less.
I understand that one of the key concepts in your teaching is that things on the outside that are happening out in the world don't actually create the feelings. So if England lose the rugby and we feel bad, tell me more about this whole area.
Well, yeah, it is one of the key principles behind our work, and what we will be doing on these 3 days is helping you see that for yourself. We're not looking to convince you, we're helping for people to have their own realisation. And what people realise is that, of course, there is things going on outside in the world of circumstances and environments or market forces or your employees or whatever it is. But our experience of that, the meaning we make out of that, is ours, and that comes from our thought. And the reason you can get a glimpse of this is you can tell that how you feel about something will change even though nothing's changing on the outside world. And it might only be a very small change. So if England lose the rugby, you might feel so disappointed that they didn't perform. But that disappointment will vary in degrees if you have a look. And then after a while, it won't be disappointing at all. And nothing's changed. So you'll start to see that thought moves, and as thought moves, our experience of the outside world moves. Now the key thing we're going to be pointing to you in these 3 days is there's no exceptions to that. It's a principle of the human system that thought creates our experience and feelings of the outside world, not the other way around. Now it might look that's true for you in 10% of cases, but we're going to show you how that's true 100% of the time. Even though thought can very cunningly make it look like it's the other way around. So we'll be exploring that illusion.
Can you give us some insight into the principles around thought?
Well, thought is a word we use all the time, but we don't really understand it or see it for what it is, because actually what you find is what's much more useful than just trying to change the content of your thinking is to understand how thought works and the nature of thought. Now all of us will have had experiences where you've been stuck in a problem, stressing over something, can't work it out, and then you go for a walk, have a cup of tea or whatever, and just something pops into your mind and you get a fresh perspective and the whole situation looks different, even though nothing's really changed in the outside world. And that's fresh thought. Now there's nothing you did to that, it just came in. Now there'll be other times when that's not happening and you really want it to happen. I want to get fresh thinking and it doesn't come in for us. So the more we understand the nature of thought, in that thought moves, that's by itself, it moves, and there's always fresh thought available in the human system. You just look at children and the massive imagination they have and the way they come out of their tantrums so quickly. You see that thought has its own power behind it. It's highly creative, yet we innocently get in its own way by trying to think it through and think we know the answer or think we know where the answer is, rather than letting the mind do its wonderful work.